bit behind. We should have been part of this. All of the plan, preparation, and the planning. I think of the Indian regulations started and people proactively because these processes have already started. Now allow me to invite Deputy Minister Pavlov host the this event at the theater. You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Pavlov. Yeah, Mr. Valerian. And ladies and gentlemen, it is the world topic of the steer the one that we are going to already choose. Integrate acted that this event will sit on you. Competitive Bulgaria for initiating this road. And I want to emphasize that Bulgaria's decision to apply for membership at the OECD, the very important one, is a decision to go forward towards a prosperous, modern society functioning in a well-functioning economy. Bulgaria will be um, along with the other developed member states of the OECD when drafting the world-renowned standard. This has been our priority for a long time now. It was working only for the but at a larger scale, I think that this sport will continue in the future. It is also a good decision for the present because walking along the path towards membership gives us the opportunity to carry out many important reforms, make important decisions so that to make our economy more competitive and look better developed in a more beneficial environment, which is beneficial for the society as a whole. So walking this pathway is a very good exercise, and I hope we'll make good use of it in the process that joining the OECD. Ministry I represent that has a big role, leading the role for and partnership role in the a technical review that you well share beginning was in 2020 the Secretary General started the issue of reviewing and auditing um, Bulgaria's headway along the 246 priorities at the OECD. It took a lot of effort by many institutions, uh, intensive commerce, governance, and trade policies. We were engaged to a large extent. Yeah, we have representatives from the academia, from the financial sector, from the business, the local voice solutions in the field of corporate governance. This is the field that made maybe most headway in October 2023. We presented to the OECD the development of the legal institutional framework post 200 to 2023 with the questions by the responsible group of the the evaluation of the OECD was provided in the report containing also recommendations and assessments of the preparedness of Bulgaria to the regulation. Participated in in the meeting of our Prime Minister, that they presented by our Prime Minister in Paris with a diplomatic party. Yeah, wonderful, great. I it's a headline with such as integrity, capital, successful with financial all participants in today's forum and great discussion. Will keep looking forward. It is a great ship opinions as stakeholders and as decision makers and have an exchange of your anxieties, views, and vision for the future. Wish you success. Wish you successful discussion. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Happy that the ministers of the economy they said that the level of the requirements of the current situation and understands the dynamic. I would like to have the honor to invite Mr. Valerian, who is the chair of the board of Transparency International. Please, Mr. Valerian. Recognize within our movement, which is present in more than 100 countries, in those necessarily easy to say 10 or 15 years ago when we were trying to explain to companies, to corporations, that it was paying off to invest in integrity. But now I think we've reached a turning point when investors really value the companies that are investing in integrity. And it's a bit the turning point that was reached 10 years ago by the companies that are investing in climate, in environment, so that now you have the investment community, and you can see that on the capital markets that are valuing companies investing in integrity. So you will tell me it's only a matter of valuation multiple, but the multiple is applied to results that have to be enhanced by the investment in integrity. So companies have to expect better revenue, lower costs by their investment in integrity. And many of you may be familiar with the prisoner's dilemma from the game theory, which demonstrates that you create much more value by investing in integrity than by investing in bribes. But one of the key conditions of this game, of the prisoner's dilemma, is that there are deterrent sanctions, that the likelihood to be caught is high and the severity of the sanctions is high, which leads us back to the governments. And if companies have to invest in integrity, it is also the case of the governments and the states. The state has to invest in integrity as well.
And we all know that it is not easy to invest in integrity when you are a government, because as for every investment, you start by incurring costs. You are unveiling corruption cases. It is embarrassing. You have a lot of people, a lot of political leaders who are saying, what are we doing? What are we doing here? And you have media attention and you have scandals. So all that is not easy, but it ends up paying off. And it pays off when you see, and you can see it for various countries and also for Bulgaria, that the countries are attracting investors, that the rating agencies are improving their ratings on the country exactly as the brokers, agencies are valuing better the companies that are investing in integrity. And all that reflects the fact that an economy that is grounded in integrity is an economy that is creating much more value than a corrupt economy. Because this economy that is grounded in integrity is an economy that works for all the citizens, that benefits to all, as opposed to the global economy of corruption, which is only benefiting to a few corrupt people. And I'm very happy to see that there are also representatives from the financial sector with us today, because the financial sector also has a key role to play in building this economy grounded in integrity, with the right processes, with the right reporting, also in cooperation with civil society. So I mentioned reporting, and I know that you will be discussing the ESG, environmental, social, and governance reporting today, which are very important, also important to translate in the Bulgarian context in cooperation with civil society. I would like to say a few words about these ESG criteria, because very often ESG is reduced to environment and to the most measurable part of environment, which is carbon emissions. But at the root of any sound ESG practice, you have the G of good governance. A company which is badly governed cannot sustainably invest for environment or for society. It is only green or social washing. So that you have to have good governance within a company. And what does it mean to have bad governance within a company? It's not only not having the right processes or having disorderly processes. It is very often when you have unchecked power at the top of the company, with one single person deciding on everything without any internal control. And that has been at the root of the major corporate scandals that we've experienced over the past years, also in Western Europe and Northern America, in all countries, that you have unchecked power. And it's very important to have a compliance function. And I know that several of you come from these compliance functions that have the power to criticize, the power to say no within the company. So that's one thing on the exercise of power. The other thing I would like to insist on, and there is room for improvement on that for many companies, it is to foster a culture of integrity within the company. And what does a culture of integrity mean? It means that when an employee of the company decides to walk back from a deal, to walk back from a client, to walk back from a country, because there is too much corruption involved, because there is corruption involved, this employee could not be penalized in her or his career. And we all know that it is challenging in every company to achieve that. But it is the result that we want to achieve if we want to have not only companies, not only governments, but also all corporate employees being free to invest themselves in integrity in a safe environment. Thank you very much for your attention.
Много стегнато и прецизно изказване.
Very concise, very precise statement. The message is not about administrative procedures, not about rules, but
a change in corporate culture in the way it makes sense. I would like now to invite Mrs. Kremena Chubanova, who will moderate the first panel, as well as the participants in the panel, to please take your seats. We are eager to listen to what you have to say.
Мене Чубанова, част от екипа на
I'm Kremena Chubanova from the team of Transparency International. I will moderate the panel, which I'm happy to introduce. We will speak about the various aspects of implementing the standards and recommendations of the organization of OECD and the way for Bulgaria in advancing towards membership in the context of the significant role of the Ministry of Economy and Industry, as Deputy Minister Pavlov just explained. In this connection, we have two ladies, representatives of the Ministry of the Economy and Industry, who have a direct role in the monitoring of the implementation of recommendations. I have the pleasure to introduce Mrs. Teodora Gergova and Mrs. Nikolina Madzheva, who will tell you more about the advancement of implementing recommendations and, in particular, the progress we achieve in the public enterprises when we are talking about the reporting requirements and ESG standards. I would also like to introduce Mr. Hendrik Boschhammer. Boschhammer, excuse me, says the speaker, a colleague from the Global Relations and Cooperation Directorate, OECD organization, who will tell us about the OECD perspective and how it works towards an open market and fair market in the Southwest European states and how our Balkan neighbors are making progress. I also have the great pleasure to have representatives of the global contract, UN global contract,
Киева, която ще сподели
global compact, Mrs. Georgieva, the Georgieva, who will share her view on the coalition working towards a social responsibility for many years, and also my great pleasure to introduce our colleague Kaunain Rahman, who is from the Secretariat of Transparency International. She will speak more on ESG in the context of collective action. Now I have the pleasure to give the floor to colleagues from the Ministry of the Economy and Industry to introduce the progress of Bulgaria with regard to the recommendations. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Mr. Valerian, Mr. Deputy Minister Pavlov, and representatives of the national and international business organizations. We are happy to be here at today's event dedicated to such important topic, which will be elaborated today. It is our pleasure. Once again, we would like to thank Transparency International to invite us to be part of the forum and to work in cooperation with them. It is my colleague Nikolina Madzheva who will try to introduce briefly the roles we have taken so far and the road we are to take with regard to the Committee of Corporate Governance and the process of accession. While we're talking, you will see the presentation for the framework of public enterprises, which we introduced at the end of last year to OECD. We will give you our explanations further on. As Mr. Pavlov mentioned earlier, the Ministry of Economy and Industry has the important role as a leading institution to perform the technical review, the corporate governance part. And that's why in 23, together with partner organizations and the ministries whose portfolio has public enterprises from different economic sectors, and together with the Financial Monitoring Commission, which is our active partner, and the Public Enterprise Control Agency, the ministry uh, prepared 3 detailed self-assessments with regard to the matching of our legislation with the 3 legal instruments of the governance committee. And this is the guidelines for fighting corruption, the recommendations for fighting corruption in public enterprises, and principles of public governance. I would want to bracket here that those methods for corporate governance are addressed to private companies and not public. Now I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Madzheva, who will elaborate on this topic and introduce the committee.
Hello, from me. Continue from where Ms. Gergova stopped. After the assessment in the technical evaluation, the first technical evaluation of the OECD took place in Bulgaria, and it was tasked to establish whether our legal framework and regulations coincide with the recommendations of the OECD. There were more than 20 working meetings with representatives of the Court of Auditors, national institutions, representatives of the public enterprises, the American Chamber of Commerce, and Transparency International. As a result of all these meetings, the team prepared a report on the framework of public enterprises in Bulgaria. This that report was presented at a meeting of the working group on state enterprises on 25th of October in Paris, where member states of the European Union were assessed and we got recommendations valid for Bulgaria. The colleague will give you an overview of the positive things noticed by the auditing team. Let me try in brief tell you about the findings of the OECD with regard to our framework report on public enterprises. One of the serious advantages for Bulgaria was that by adopting the law on public enterprises and the rules of procedure for its application, Bulgaria managed to adhere to the standards for reporting and so on of the OECD with regard to the 267 public owned enterprises in Bulgaria. We had a positive finding with regard to our efforts in combating corruption and in terms of integrity in the public sector. Another positive thing was strategy to combat corruption and the action plan to 2027. So, in the focus was the recommendation of the European Commission on whistleblowers, and the effort we've made to adapt a law in this regard. Representatives of the Ministry of Economy were present at this meeting organized by Transparency International. It was very beneficial for us. Another headway in terms of fighting corruption is the code of conduct of state employees and the anti-corruption plans made mandatory for public enterprises. Those two documents are mandatory for all public enterprises. Then Bulgaria made headway in terms of realizing a policy on public uh, enterprises prepared by the Agency on Public Enterprises and Control. Control this is a 4-year policy, and the transparency is guaranteed by public publicizing of these reports on an annual basis. We have a report for 21 and 22. The report for 23 is pending. Then, with regard to the recommendation on notifying and publicizing the information, we are working on guaranteeing that public enterprises, in the spirit of transparency, will make more and more information public, which will be up to the international standards. We have approved business programs already for 3 years ahead with financial and non-financial goals and indicators, and also rules for electing the governing bodies of public enterprises. Also, um, another finding was that in Bulgaria there is the information system, public system with public access containing information of in enterprises published annually and quarterly, including financial data. And the financial reports are audited, and the audit reports are made public. This is a framework of the positive findings of the OECD. Ms. Madzheva will tell you about the recommendations that we've received. As my colleague has already mentioned, the law on public enterprises and the rules of procedure have been enforced since 2020. It's been 4 years. It's not much. Naturally, we have recommendations. We received recommendations for improvement. Generally speaking, the recommendations are in terms of getting more transparency and better reporting. The environment should be as transparent and as accessible as possibly, and the opportunity for political pressure should be lessened. Also, there were recommendations in terms of applying international accounting standards, although the application of these standards so far has been very good, as assessed by the OECD. Um, a recommendation was made to have monthly meetings with the evaluating team for better feedback and reporting, and we are in the process of preparing a letter marking our headway it will be sent by the ministry soon to the assessing team. For this purpose, we've made a working group encompassing representatives of various bodies involved in this effort, and will be ready soon. New thing with regard to public enterprises. On the 12th and 13th of March, this working group adopted the fifth version of the corporate governance recommendations. On the 2nd and 3rd of May, these recommendations and guidelines were approved. And they are now the main instrument used in our work with the public enterprises. The new thing, the guidelines, is that we have a new public enterprises chapter, which also includes text on public governance. It will evolve in the future and make more detailed. In conclusion, allow me to thank you for giving us the opportunity to provide an overview of our history. We will keep working with the final goal of making Bulgaria a member of the OECD. I hope that our effort will be rewarded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gergova and Mrs. Madzheva, for the introduction. I will interrupt the presentations and statements for a while. I have now to invite the last participant in our panel, Dr. Associate Professor Marina Stefanova, who will present the perspective from the academic community, how the challenges to businesses to apply the new standard for sustainable governance and reporting are addressed and supported by universities and by training institutes. Now we have a sustainable environment for efficient implementation of the new requirements by preparing the right people for that. Now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Hendrik Boschhammer, who represents the Global Relations and Cooperation Director of OECD, and our colleagues from the Ministry of the Economy and Industry, who presented the sites and talk information on how Bulgaria develops and how it implements the recommendations, particularly the guidelines for corporate governance. I would like now to talk to Mr. Boschhammer, who will present the perspective of OECD, not on what is happening in Bulgaria, but how countries from Southeast Europe, with the help of OECD, enhance their capacity for a fair market by implementing all requirements of standards of good corporate governance and business integrity. Please, Dr. Boschhammer.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here on behalf of the OECD Europe Regional Program. We are doing lots of work in integrity and anti-corruption with non-routine members. Knowing that Bulgaria is on the session after that, in our division will not stage engaging with Bulgaria on the anti-corruption work, but our colleagues in this afternoon will be speaking more about the principle development on interaction and the engagement with Bulgaria in that sense. I have the pleasure of presenting you the next 15 minutes or so the work that's in our division, how they do during the countries in the region, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and Serbia, in terms of fostering integrity and tackling corruption. Um, so if we go to the next slide, very much. You see the the projects here summarized. Thank you. Summarized on this slide. So the main objective initially is to foster integrity, to take corruption and that in the countries in Southeast Asia. I mentioned Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia. It's something that started in summer of 2019. It was one year and in the previous country, we brings together in a collective action approach with stakeholders. Governments, of course, have a very important role in taking the primary responses to the issue of integrity and corruption. But we keep bring to the table the perspective of businesses, academia, civil society. We're also working with Transparency International in several of the countries in the project. And the project is funded by the Cement Integrity Initiative. Um, so we are thankful, of course, for this support. In terms of activities, we have make, to make sure that the government, the government has access to the right people, that also experience from the OECD countries and also share experience in Bulgaria, the successful project that you were implementing here. We are working on the awareness among different set of stakeholders. Very importantly, we also work with academic the business or political leaders tomorrow, and creating the right awareness among the students will really be to the culture of integrity in the countries. And then also, we're promoting OECD standards, those that are currently being implemented in Bulgaria. And we also bring to the table EU standards that have proven important in advancing an integrity agenda. And we also bring these to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and then also to Serbia, knowing that Croatia is already an EU member. Give you an idea about creating awareness, building capacity, and promoting international standards. Well, you see here that we actually doing, we have created collective action communities in each of the countries. In total, we have something like 300 representatives from government, academia, businesses, civil society, to take stock of the issues that the countries are facing in the area of integrity, anti-corruption, but then also making sure that there is sensitivity, there is awareness around why it is important to tackle corruption issues, and also to build awareness around the extent to which it can be an issue if there are integrity issues in the country. Building capacity, I mentioned that already. So we are inviting governments, government representatives, but also businesses to a number of trainings that are taking place at the OECD. More than 50 events actually have been promoted, and participants have participated from the countries. And that is probably one of the very positive outcomes of the COVID crisis, if I can mention that many of these events actually take place online, and therefore we have seen a very strong participation, very strong interest from Southeast Europe to participate in the different OECD events that equip policymakers, for instance, with the right skills, and also allow them to exchange in peer learning about the recipes that have proven successful in other countries. We also have performed, and you see that on the next slide. We also have performed a lot of analysis detailed analysis for each of the countries to analyze where are the issues that Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and Serbia are facing when it comes to corruption and integrity issues. We have looked at the legislation that is in place, have mapped that against OECD standards, EU standards to show the gaps. And then based on the status quo analysis, we have then formulated jointly with the collective action communities the tailored recommendation to tackle some of these integrity issues. And a lot of recommendations have then been developed and, by the way, also adopted then by the governments and implemented. And we'll come back to that in a second. I mentioned the OECD standards that underlie the formulation of the recommendations, and there are a few ones I like to point out to. So we have the competition assessment toolkit, for example, the recommendation fighting bid rigging in public procurement, the public procurement toolbox, also here, very actionable toolbox that is at hand for the governments. The G20 OECD principle for corporate governance, we'll be coming back to that this afternoon or in this latest session. The guidelines for multinational enterprises also here, a very important OECD instrument that the countries have been translating into their national legislation. If we go back to the presentation, and maybe the slide is going to show in a second, we have seen very encouraging reforms being undertaken in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and Serbia in the scope of the project. And we have seen that, for example, in Bosnia, amendments to the law on prevention of conflict of interest has been passed in spring of this year. We're also seeing a new business ombudsman institution having been introduced in 2023. And in 2022, a law on public procurement has been amended, reflecting the recommendations of the collective action community. Similarly, in Croatia, a lot of progress has been made. We have seen a new lobbying act that has been adopted in fall of last year. It will be formally translated or formally adopted in the 1st of October, if I understand from our Croatian colleagues the latest news. Then there's the OECD Anti-Bribery Convention that has been adopted in Croatia also last year. And then also a new law has been adopted for protecting whistleblowers. So in Serbia, I'd like to point out that there's also some very encouraging progress. So, for example, the law on the management of state-owned enterprises has been adopted in last year. Anti-corruption strategy, a new one has been adopted for the time period of 2023 for the next 5 years, so bring it to until 2028. And this strategy has been also adopted last year. And then finally, a new law on public procurement has been adopted last year. So we actually see a lot of things that have been happening in response to the work of the collective action community in each of the countries. Maybe to give you a bit more an idea about how actually we work. So you see on the left-hand side that work that we are doing together with the collective action communities in each of the countries. So they are convening more or less every 6 months to take stock, formulate recommendations. I mentioned that already. And then we also have very recently engaged in capacity building workshops. So only in April, I've been in Serbia and in Croatia. We have been working with the anti-corruption authorities and the competition agencies, bringing our specialized OECD experts there and discussing some good practices and how they can be applied in these countries. Then I would also like to mention the work that we're doing together with the academia, with the universities and the countries. In total, we have close contact, close collaboration with 8 universities in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and in Serbia. We are not only holding university lectures, building awareness, sensitivity around the issue of anti-corruption, but we have also worked together with the universities to update the curricula. So In the university courses, we have seen that all universities have actually amended or improved their curricula into integrating new elements on anti-corruption. And also at several universities, we have also seen that innovative practices have been integrated into their curricula. So, for example, anti-corruption legal clinics have been established in several of them. The principle here is that businesses that are confronted with a corruption case and that would like to seek legal advice, instead of going directly to the court, they can actually seek informal advice at universities. So professors are offering that kind of advice, but allowing students to participate in the elaboration of legal advice that is given to businesses. That, of course, has the benefit that the company that is seeking help, that they have access to information, and that on that basis they can decide then either to seek formal legal advice to bring the case to a court or not to go ahead with that. The students have learning outcomes. They are confronted with real corruption cases. They're able to learn how anti-corruption laws is applied. And also they are building, of course, awareness to what extent corruption integrity is important for their country. And hopefully going forward, they will be a lot more critical about corruption cases. And also that helps, of course, then building a culture of integrity in the countries. So this is in a nutshell the work that we are doing in the OECD Southeast Europe Regional Program in support of integrity, anti-corruption. Thank you very much.
Много благодаря на Хенрик за
Thank you so much, Henrik, for sharing information about what's going on in our neighboring countries in terms of implementing the requirements and recommendations of OECD. It's an example of how the collective action of all stakeholders can lead to a sustainable economic development and integrity in the long run. So we started with Bulgaria, with the way Bulgaria applies the recommendations and runs along the path towards membership. We told you about the development of the Bulgarian legal framework. You received information about the way public enterprises have already implemented the amendments of the legal framework and the recommendations. We heard about the neighboring countries, Western Balkan countries, and now let's go to the global context and see the global perspective of sustainable development, business integrity, and corporate responsibility in the context of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now, it's my pleasure to give the floor to Mrs. Darinka Georgieva, who's the executive director of the Bulgarian network of the UN Compact. Um, she will present the biggest world initiative on corporate responsibility and Bulgaria's place in it. Thank you. Hello. I'm here to present to you um, the global compact of the UN, the largest network uniting more than 25,000 organizations, most of them multinational businesses. And we also have more than 50 Bulgarian representatives, companies that are members of this enormous network. I will tell you about the practical solutions our organization can offer to businesses in terms of sustainability and successful corporate governance. Why is sustainability important? Um, Businesses need motivation, and for us, sustainability is the winning business strategy for several reasons. Sustainability gives competitive advantage to the businesses who want to survive and who consider the ESG principles important. Sustainability leads to lower costs and better risk analysis. It brings a positive goodwill and uh, because it's a good brand. The UN is a good brand, but you need to put a lot of effort and communicate in a better way, which means that you need to go through several internal processes, employ various tools, and finally achieve the headway and use the headway briefs that are really good too. Communication is regulation, sorry, is another motivation. Every business works within a certain legal framework, and it needs to abide by it. Um, there are new and new European regulations coming in force. The businesses need to be aware of them in advance. A few weeks ago, we were represented at a summit with representatives of the European Parliament and Commission. They presented new regulations of the European Union that will be coming in force soon. And we shouldn't forget that all these regulations come with the idea of a better and more sustainable future. The transposition of these regulations shouldn't be just whitewashing, just putting a tick on this line. It should lead to a better success of the company. And then, politically speaking, sustainable companies have also better access to public and private financing because sustainability is a requirement already introduced by banks and state institutions. The Global Compact steps on several root principles, human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. Usually, when you speak about sustainability, you rarely connect it with the fight against corruption. But in fact, this principle was adopted with a resolution of the United Nations in 2004. The other three were adopted in the year 2000. They are all recognized as very important, but anti-corruption is the one that we need to work on further. There are several initiatives in cooperation with Transparency International and other stakeholders to introduce the anti-corruption principle into the internal control and internal reporting systems of the businesses. Then another thing I'd like to focus on, the 10th principle, anti-corruption, has to do with goal number 16 from the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. Bulgaria is a party and has committed to work on this goal. Um, and combating corruption and bribes is measured in concrete terms, and one of the indicators is the number of times a business or a corporation has encountered cases of corruption. This data is monitored, and I think next year Bulgaria will present a report to the UN with the data on this goal. So, what can the businesses do joining the UN Compact? They get access to resources, allowing them to make their own risk assessment and gap analysis. They can assess their omissions. Also, academic resources are available, allowing the businesses to develop their internal policies, to integrate within the regulatory framework, and, in general terms, build a more transparent and better governed business. I will give you an overview of two of the instruments available, but um, for a business, it's always important to have a business case, to have a good reasoning why you should do this. Um, and the business needs a solid analysis why they need to work on combating corruption. I hope that more and more businesses will become aware of the importance of applying principle. Now, overcoming and mitigating corruption risks is a very important global effort. The losses due to corruption and bribery are calculated at more than several billions per annum. Um, it leads to reputational risks, legal risks. You know, there have been corruption scandals all over, financial risks. Loss of resources is important for any business, and erosion of trust within the company. If people are aware that the company needs to operate in a risky environment, it leads to negative effect for all stakeholders. I've also provided you with an overview of the 6 steps towards eliminating corruption. The first step is involvement, engagement, public or internal. If this first step, if there is an engagement, is present, then assessment, defining the risk, um, concrete actions. Be it policies, be it tools or internal systems, trainings may be used so that the employees are aware of the anti-corruption effort within the company, and also measuring and communicating the success. It is a step that is important for the general image of the company before the others. I've given you a picture of a tool developed together with Transparency International. It gives guidelines, accessible guidelines for risk analysis, and a final tool the transformational governance corporate kit, it only came out this year. Let's make the G in ESG stronger is the motto. 25 of the largest and most active companies um, provided feedback and articles that became part of this kit. Um, so this is the global perspective. This is what the Global Compact has been trying to achieve for the last 24, next year 25 years. Provide a framework for the fight against corruption and provide the tools to the companies so that the businesses are able to build internal capacity. Well, we already have sustainability um, experts, but very often still sustainability is part of the compliance department. It doesn't matter where it is put, but it is beneficial. It is beneficial for the reputation of the company, for the employees, and for the future of the business. Thank you.
Много благодаря на госпожа Георгиева.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Georgieva, not only for the perspective on global objectives and global UN global contact, but also for presenting the business case and why business is ever more aware uh, of the benefit of implementing the standards developed over the years, because we are talking about the OECD and the objectives for sustainable development of the UN. They are, in fact, the values which brings us to the to changing, amending international standards, to the uh, strategic framework development and its efficient implementation. And since good governance, anti-corruption activities are the 16th objective of peace, fairness, and strong institutions, I would like to focus on objective number 17, and these are partnerships for sustainable development and partnerships in general, joint action, collective action for working together and achieving business integrity and sustainable development. I would like to give the floor to my colleague Rahman, who is a business integrity specialist, Kaunain Rahman, and she will bring us back to the perspective of how collective action is working towards implementing ESG standards and achieving sustainable development. Please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and many thanks for having me here as we consider these very important themes, that offer practical solutions for sustainable development and business integrity challenges. So when we look at this theme broadly, there are two tools at our disposal that are absolutely invaluable, and these are collective action and ESG. Now, taking each of these concepts, when it comes to ESG, there is often a heightened focus on the E, as Francois also kindly mentioned earlier this morning, no? And but if we look at E, S, and G as these three pillars, um, G is critical for delivering the E and the S. Moreover, anti-corruption and integrity practices are literally the bedrock of the G pillar. So if we are looking at E, S, and G, anti-corruption is a bedrock and skeletal framework of the G, but also impacting the E and the S. So therefore, there is absolutely growing global consensus that the significant role that companies can play in combating inequality, human rights violations, and climate change will absolutely prove futile if corruption is not simultaneously reined in. So that is why integrity becomes such a crucial topic when considering ESG. Um, as we all operate in the business integrity sphere, we are well acquainted with the relatively new Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD, and its ensuing requirements, the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, the ESRS. We also have the Due Diligence Directive coming up, but more on that a bit later. But as we zoom into this specific um, ESRS G1, which is the European Sustainability Reporting Standards G1 on business conduct, it actually shines a light on how companies can successfully integrate sustainability into their governance structures. So, without getting too technical, and please forgive me if I get too technical at times, I'm very passionate about this subject and I get carried away. So, without getting too technical and going into specific disclosures, if we look at the main themes of what actually comprises the ESRS G1, it focuses on three key pillars. The first one is integration of integrity. How is that done? And regarding that, you have the G1.1, which specifically looks at corporate culture and business conduct policies. The second sort of theme in the business conduct standard is on risk management and control systems. And there you have G1.3, which is looking at prevention and detection of corruption, as well as confirmed incidents of bribery. And then we have the third overarching category, which is on really ensuring that there are ethical supply chains. And there you have G1.2, which is management of supply relations, G1.5 on political lobbying and influence, as well as payment relationships. No, so these three sort of categories help us understand how, how integrity can actually be embedded in governance structures and when it comes to ESG reporting. Um, Very interestingly, without getting a side anecdote on this, is that these are the finalized standards on business conduct. And in the exposure draft, which had come out in April 2022, EFRAG, Sustainability Reporting Board, which is the body that has come up with these European standards, had included another disclosure requirement, which was beneficial ownership transparency. Very interestingly, in the November 2022 first draft version, it was removed. So, interesting anecdote there, but we are still advocating and working alongside EFRAG to reintroduce beneficial ownership transparency as a possible disclosure standard in the next iteration and update of the ESRS G1, as well as consider it in the upcoming topical standards that will be there on mining and oil and sector. So, oil and gas sector. Sorry. So now, the reason for giving you this entire technical overload was to help you understand where integrity and anti-corruption become the bedrock of good governance. So without them, as we can see, sustainability efforts are hollow promises. So the ESRS G1 mandates disclosure on anti-corruption training, whistleblower protection mechanisms, and how companies investigate and address allegations of corruption. Um, Now, here, ESG sounds like a fantastic, amazing space where we can all just walk into the sunset and implement all the sustainability goals. However, there are practical, real world challenges associated with this. So, some of them are lack of standardization. So, earlier we had this split between mandatory requirements versus voluntary requirements. The EU has taken a giant leap in this regard with the now CSRD and ESRS G1, but in most other jurisdictions, there are not mandatory ESG requirements. You have voluntary frameworks and you have a discrepancy between the different frameworks that exist. But we are also trying to really bridge these gaps and work with the different standard setters on ESGs. For example, Transparency International is working with the GRI Economic Impact Standards Working Group on updating its economic impact standards, specifically 205 on anti-corruption, which is on ESG disclosures. So we are trying to bridge these gaps as we move forward, and mandatory ESG reporting requirements in jurisdictions taking inspiration from the CSRD would be a good step forward. Other challenge is materiality guidance. So when it comes to materiality assessments, um, hypothetically, it could happen that companies don't disclose something because they don't consider it material, consider it to have a material impact. So it's very important that when we have these reporting standards, that there are adequate materiality assessment guidances available and being implemented so that there is adequate disclosure of information when it comes to ESG reporting on the side of companies. Um, on the other hand, there are a lot of costs that are, that are associated with having this kind of not just reporting externally, but then also supplementing that with your internal ESG strategies. But we have found through several of our various research papers, which you can find on our websites, that integrity pays off in the long run. No, it's always better to invest in integrity because in the long run, that actually drives up your profitability. And finally, we have risks of misinterpretation and greenwashing. It is fashionable to have a sustainability tag, but are we actually walking the talk? And that's really important to consider when we are looking at the entire ESG landscape. I've mentioned some of the challenges highlighted here, but I would invite you to look at our website Transparency International website, as well as um, um, our knowledge repository that actually has a lot of these research briefs that looks at mandatory versus voluntary ESG disclosure requirements. And we have a forthcoming paper soon that will look at what are the incentives and disincentives for ESG reporting, as well as does ESG reporting actually work on the ground to impact anti-corruption behavior in companies? So I would invite you to have a look at that. Now, having painted this ESG picture, let's move a little bit to collective action. Collective action can amplify the impact of good governance. Now, imagine a consortium of companies in any particular sector or industry working together. So, through collective action, they could actually develop a standardized code of conduct for ethical sourcing practices, perhaps, or ensure fair wages between each other, discussing, what would be the minimum requirements of paying their workers. Have also have you know agreed upon standards for safe working conditions throughout the supply chains. And such practices, when businesses come together, can not only enhance their individual ESG performance, but also strengthens the ethical reputation of the entire sector or industry. Moreover, collective action initiatives, as we have seen here in many examples, needn't just be limited to business, right? So we have collective action platforms where business collaborate not only within their sectors, but also with government and civil society. And these can really be powerful catalysts for change. Now, let's paint another scenario where we have companies that are facing a problem of corruption in public infrastructure projects. They join forces with the government's procurement agency and transparency NGOs, and together they implement a collective action tool known as integrity packs. For high value, high risk construction tenders. For those of you who may not be familiar, and Francois also very kindly mentioned integrity packs earlier this morning, an integrity pack is a powerful anti corruption tool where companies bidding for a project, a government agency awarding the contract, and an independent civil society led monitoring body all sign an agreement. And this agreement commits all parties to transparent procurement practices, prohibits bribery and corruption, and establishes a clear process for reporting and investigating any suspicious activity. So, by creating a platform for collective action through integrity packs, such an initiative would deter corrupt practices within the construction center. So, there we have the stronger governance, the G coming in. Whistleblower hotlines and independent monitoring would further strengthen this deterrent effect. This in turn would lead to fairer competition on bids, which is providing a level playing field. Now, there you have the positive social impact coming in with the S. You have more efficient project completion due to reduced delays and reduced wastage. So that's your impact on the E there, right? So ultimately, all of this will also result in increased public trust in the integrity of the specific government infrastructure project. So IPs in this way can also IPs sorry, I use the shortcut in my head, but integrity pacts in this way can also really weave in specific ESG requirements also as per the specific sector. And as I said, these collective action initiatives are not just hypothetical scenarios, but they exist. We have had integrity pacts that have been monitored by TI chapters in over 30 countries across the world, including Bulgaria. I would invite you to have a look at our Integrity Pact compendium, which lists details on all of these Integrity Pact projects across the world. And as of now, Transparency International is set to launch a global Integrity Pact blueprint that will encompass the learnings of the decades of Integrity Pact implementation and bring it to meet the challenges of procurement in the 21st century, also including sustainability considerations such as ESG. So one of the very interesting things that you could include in an Integrity Pact is what are your ESG scores and what are you doing towards the different ESG requirements. So apart from integrity pacts, which are a specific kind of collective action initiative, we have several others out there. We have the construction sector transparency initiative cost, which fosters collaboration between all these three stakeholders. They actually have a very interesting shared online platform where companies can report bribery incidents and suspicious activities anonymously. And there's, of course, also the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, EITI. We're all well aware of that. Yeah, I mean, coming to the benefits of having such overlaps between robust governance and collective action for business are numerous. So you immediately have a reduced risk. So strong governance systems can really identify and mitigate these ESG risks. You have enhanced investor confidence. You have improved operational efficiency, stronger brand reputation for those companies, especially MNEs that are out there. And finally, you help in creating a level playing field where collective action initiatives can really be used to establish industry-wide standards for sustainable practices. So having said this, ESG and collective action are symbiotic in that sense. They can be used to really shape a more sustainable and equitable future. And so, as just to sum up, but ESG principles really serve as a rallying point for collective action initiatives, enhancing their credibility and scaling solutions. And collective action, in turn, can really amplify ESG practice influences while advocating for policy change. Looking ahead a bit into the situation that we are in as of now, we have regulations like the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. It is here. It is not going anywhere. It came into effect last year. From this year, 2024, we have the reporting cycle starting. All of the companies in the EU that were subject to the NFRD are now subject to the ESRD and will have to report against the ESRS, including ESRS G1 on business conduct. So such reporting frameworks are here to stay and will only get more enhanced as time goes by. So what we can do as a community of anti-corruption practitioners is really put together our collective knowledge, our collective learnings, and really capitalize our collective efforts to really make sure that these reporting requirements are translating into strategies in business integrity and culture within organizations. Yeah, so I hope that I could make a good case for ESG and collective action, and hopefully we see many more of these initiatives taking fruit in the future. Thank you.
Много благодаря, Конан, за това.
Thank you very much, Kaunain, for your presentation. My take from this wonderful world of ESG is that we cannot wake up one morning and find ourselves in a world where we implement everything in practice. And from the perspective of challenges, the ever developing national legislation and standards, the international framework, the directive that is already in effect for corporate reporting with regard to sustainability. Soon we will come face to face with the other directive for corporate responsibility and the delivery chain because it was approved and adopted by the European Parliament less than a month ago on the 24th of April. And we are only waiting for approval from the Council. 20 days after that, it will be it will be go into effect. But of course, all the others along the chain of services and delivery will be affected in a national and international scale. And when we speak about these developing standards and developing need of those who need to implement the standards in practice, and what makes the global UN Global Compact Network and Transparency International high standards is very important. But business needs a lot of support uh, for capacity building, for establishing a sustainable environment, and experts who can apply the standards, who understand the taxonomy, and understand what is materiality in reporting and non materiality, not to do greenwashing when we do something. And now I have the floor. I'll have the pleasure to give the floor to Associate Professor Marina Stefanova, who will focus on the challenges to business and how training, education, and the business community who work with young people and experts to give young people the practical guidelines, the instruments to apply standards, and what is the significance of training in the academic environment and our joint action. Please, Mrs. Stefanova.
Здравейте и от мен. Благодаря за
Good morning from me. Thank you for the invitation. Thanks for the colleagues who share their perspectives. I know that lunch is coming and you'd like to get some fresh air. But allow me, in brief, to mention several important aspects in the framework of this topic. Now, my topic was challenges that the business and the academia are facing in terms of sustainability. So let me outline the challenges and then I will tell you how we are trying to be in service of society and of all the stakeholders who um, look at us for information and assistance. Several things have been already said. So, what's the surface like? We have state administration, but they are not always prepared to answer all the questions the businesses would ask them because it's not only a matter of regulations and laws. Um, it's a much broader topic of the environment. So you become an employee of a business, you communicate with your own business environment, but you're not always aware of the broader ESG context. We are missing the daily assistance and the daily routine of understanding this topic. On the other hand, we have numerous regulations and um, legal acts that are applied and understood by the various departments, be it in the business or in the administrative institution. Everybody is responsible for their own regulations, and we need to look at the business from the more general perspective of governing the company and gaining added value. And then we have this very strange, mechanical, I would say, problem of how shall we integrate all these regulation through a one-stop shop for a single organization responsible for the governance or otherwise. We haven't decided on it. You've been witnessing the development of the regulatory framework, and we are only in the middle of our road. w- Even when the deadlines come in 2026, we'll be still within and inside the profiling effort, but we need to take into account the fact that we are just in the middle of it. We haven't reached the end. Then the challenges. We are required to report, but not only for our legal person, we are required to report on other legal persons that we communicate with, which we are not responsible for. So we count on the goodwill of other businesses in order to put something in our own annual report. This may be shocking for many colleagues. Um, from the legal perspective, say how shall a business resolve the issue of finding the most beneficial, the most effective way forward? On the other hand, who will bear the responsibility along the chain of delivery? Um, then how shall we manage the impact our business has on the environment, on the human potential? For me, the um, E and S come first, and only then we have the level of transparency, the integrity. Um, Imagine it as a boiling cauldron where the various bubbles appear at the surface, bubbles of issues that come to the forefront, but the actual problem is at the bottom of the cauldron. So, how should we be looking for the solutions? First, let's analyze the problems we are facing. We don't have a single jargon. What um, uh, what language should we use? This is new terminology. We have the academic framework, we have the legal framework, but we put in laws terms that so far have been used only in a business context. It's very important to speak one and the same language, otherwise there will be misunderstanding. Now, the second problem we are facing, principles and values, they should be one and the same. But there is a big gap between the first and the second pillar. Um, Business will be business, and the public sector will be the public sector. The businesses are following private interests, and the public sector has public values. It's very difficult to explain to business that they also create public goods and public value. It's very difficult to translate this concept in business terms, and this leads to very big conceptual problems even before we add the regulatory framework. The last problem is having a single go ahead. When I was in the university, I was told that, well, the private sector has the purpose to gain profit, and the public sector has another goal. Nowadays, with the global goals, these two different values and goals coincide. And this map we are talking about includes all these problems and all the opportunities to resolve them and gain profit. Uh, Now, I'm saying that because only if they understand that businesses would let integrity and good governance be part of their systems, comes reporting and implementation. Mm, For me personally, you should understand when I speak to my students, um, when I have to tell them that uh, businesses are invited to come and be assessed whether they are up to resolving not only market problems but public problems as well, because they have the characteristics to add value and uh, get effect. It's difficult. So we should ask ourselves: do these businesses have the opportunity to govern well the capital they have? Because then they are aware of public capital as well, not only private one. And then comes reporting again. So about Sofia University and my colleagues, because I work together with colleagues with a whole ecosystem. This is not about academic knowledge. Partnerships are extremely important here. We, the academics, do not work in a sterile environment. We work in a place where exchange takes place. Um, for example, in progressive departments such as the economic department of the university, we created several thematic master's programs covering to a lesser and larger extent this issue. For example, a new accounting master's degree will include the legal perspective. Then we have other master's degrees where the other aspects of the issue are included. And we are trying also to penetrate the bachelor's degree curricula because we need specialized with holistic thinking. Management and governance is a new master's program, is a new bachelor's degree program done in cooperation between three departments. It's a process of integration. First, it took place within the businesses. Now it takes place in the academic world. For us, working with the practitioners, say accountants, say sustainability experts, is extremely important in order to consolidate the knowledge we come across. We have this academy for 3 years now. It started as a program of sustainability experts. Nowadays, more and various experts take part in order to popularize this knowledge and to allow it to be part of the programs of other universities as well. Now, apart from an academic institution, we are also scientists. Scientists support long-term sustainable solutions in the public sector. Our focus in this regard is to identify the good business model so that new companies from now on are born sustainable. So thank you for your patience before the coffee break, and I'm available for questions.
А, Много, много благодаря.
Thank you so much, Associate Professor Stefanova, for coming here and for being so passionate and convincing in your presentation. I liked a lot this metaphor with the boiling cauldron and the bubbles coming to the surface. Yes, there are many issues that need to be resolved, and it's a good thing that each of our participants may give you the different perspectives to different issues. Now it's time for questions. Over to you, madam, but first tell us who is your question addressed to? We need microphone. I'm responsible for the master's degree on economy and management of public resources. Uh, my question has to do with the governance of public enterprises. So glad that the economic department of Sofia University has invested a lot in um, this program. We have a special course in public enterprise management. We are the only ones in Bulgaria, actually. Allow me to thank Kalin Slavov, who also teaches financial law at university. So this was my minute for advertising my program. But I have a proposal to the Deputy Minister of Economy as a member of the team responsible for drafting analysis of state-owned enterprises. It was a document of more than 1,000 pages. It was published on the Ministry of Economy website. Dear Deputy Minister, it's high time that you start thinking on organizing the professional management of state-owned enterprises. You have the full support of the academia. This should be a course or an effort to address all problems public-owned enterprises face. Um, let's really integrate all these recommendations that became part of our national legislation. It's high time that all people who become part of the management of the various types of public enterprises be certified, go through qualification course in order to guarantee that they have the knowledge to apply all these novelties we heard about so far. So thank you. I won't go further. I'll be here during the coffee break. My contacts, I may give them to you if you wish. And thank you, Marina, for giving us such a great presentation of our faculty. And thank you for the topic of G in ISG.
Ако няма други въпроси и коментари,
If you don't have further questions or comments, let's applaud our panelists. Thank you all. And let's now have a family photo first, and then we'll give the floor to the other panelists.
Those of you who are still outside the hall, come in. The core remains for the second panel usually, and the temperature of our presentation is following an upward trend. So this shows how important good governance is and business integrity, and how significant this will be for direct important things for business, such as profit formation and access to resources. In order to catch up with time, which is almost impossible, I'd like to give the floor to our first participant in the panel, Adriana De La Cruz, policy analyst in the Capital Markets and Financial Institution Division at the OECD for Directorate for Financial and Enterprise Affairs. You can see on the screen.
Yes, we do. We can see the presentation. You can start if you want.
Stability more at the global level.
gas emissions. Just the participating. Now, very quickly on the investor landscape.
important because the highest in companies, but also with place. Now, it's not pure the company market capitalization has indeed already a committee that is responsible of sustainability matters that reports directly to the board. And we can see that the shares are higher, for example, in the US and Europe, for example. Now, in order to fulfill the key functions in assessing the company's risk profile and guiding the governance practices of the companies, boards can also indeed take into consideration some of the sustainability matters when they establish their executive compensation. And we can see in the graph on your right that executive compensation is indeed linked to sustainability matters in 80% of the companies in Europe already, and for example, followed by other advanced economies with 74%. In the United States, this share is also high with 60%. We can see that in this sense, Asia is a bit of an exception to this trend, and as you can see in the graph, only on average 20% of the companies link the sustainability compensation, the executive compensation to sustainability matters. And finally, on the trends, this slide is on stakeholders and the engagement of the stakeholders. Indeed, it is important to promote a cooperation with employees, and indeed, in order to promote these cooperations, the companies have, for example, ways of establishing mechanisms for employee participation. For example, it can be in the form of workers' councils, for example, employee representation on the. So in the table on the left, you can see one of these examples that is on employee representation on the board, and you can see that globally only 14% of the market capitalization has a committee in place, but this is a more widespread practice, for example, in China, where 62% of the companies by market capitalization indeed have employee representation in the board. It's also high in Europe with almost 40%, and in Latin America with 10% of the companies. And finally, to end on these trends, globally, almost 6,000 companies that account for 70% of the market capitalization disclose already information on whether they engage or not with their stakeholders. And we can see that this share is highest in Europe. Well, almost 90% of the global market capital of the region's market capitalization discloses this kind of information. Now, very quickly, I just spoke about the first chapter that we have on the trends and the practices of the companies. And also in this report, we took account of the regulatory developments. Of course, now it's not up to date because the report dates from March, but it takes account of the regulatory developments from October 2022 to September 2023. And just very quickly on this slide, I think, I mean, you may be also very aware already of this, but the ISSB issued its first two standards, IFRS S1 and S2, in June 2023. The EU Commission already issued as well the first set of EU sustainability reporting standards. And embarking on a full range of sustainability matters, including climate, biodiversity, workers, and business conduct, differently from ISSB that focused firstly on climate change. The OECD as well updated, apart from the revision of the G20 OECD principles of corporate governance that have a new chapter on sustainability, the guidelines for multinational enterprises and responsible conduct were also updated in June 2023. And also these two last developments are quite important because indeed this new revised version of the principles on corporate governance calls for enhanced information on sustainability, and thus proposes that assurance of the information is key to have better quality information. So indeed, in June 2023, the IASSB proposed a draft on international standard on sustainability assurance, and IASBA also approved an exposure draft on ethics and independent standards for sustainability reporting. Now, finally, and perhaps most importantly, what are the key policy messages in this report? And we have three main pillars. So first of all, on disclosure, indeed, we saw that the companies that represent 86% of the market capitalization disclose already sustainability information. But when we see this in the number of companies, it only accounts for 10,000 companies out of the 44,000 listed companies globally. So it's indeed very important that sustainability-related disclosure frameworks may need to be more flexible, for example, about the existing capacities of the companies and taking into account, for example, the different levels of development or the size of the company, for example. Second of all, and I already mentioned it a bit, but on the assurance, indeed, regulators may consider where the voluntary assurance is already a common practice. They may require that the largest ones make a requirement that the largest companies make the assurance of the sustainability information. And in jurisdictions where, for example, high quality assurance for all the sustainability information of a specific company might be not possible or perhaps even too costly, these jurisdictions may require, for example, to obtain the assurance of selected or specific sustainability-related disclosures, such as, for example, the very important greenhouse gases emissions disclosure. And finally, and I already spoke a bit on it, but on investors, indeed, the fact that institutional investors hold the largest share of the equity in the 100 listed companies that have the highest disclosed GHG emissions, indeed, it highlights how important it is that the corporate governance frameworks are well placed and are functioning to facilitate and support the shareholders' engagement. So this is all for me. Thank you very much. I invite you to download the report if you want to delve more into details. Thank you.
declaration under the NFRD. It has been already repealed, the directive, but with regard to 2024, the NFD will be replaced by the so-called sustainability report document. I think you are aware that amendments are underway of the Accounting Act. The draft the draft bill has already been uploaded on the website. You can familiarize yourselves with it. But the main impression we left off following the comments of colleagues are not really positive with regard to the transition from CSRD. Now, the current legal act is a copy and paste effort from the current CSRD, but nevertheless, it still creates a certain confusion for the listed companies who will have to apply it from one moment on. The administrative burden will be increased because this sustainability report will have to be audited by the so-called green auditor. But bear it in mind that together with the Accounting Act, there are amendments being introduced in the Independent Financial Control Act, creating conditions mm, uh, for this profession, actually, of the green auditor. In conclusion, the topic on non-financial reporting and disclosure of information in the listed companies is not a new thing. It's a thing that's already been done. But with the new Accounting Act, these SIS will become mandatory. The reporting will be measured, that is, the greenness will be measured in a more specific way. So far, the companies would submit their non-financial declaration, but what was in them was information that, well, we've taken certain initiatives, we abide by the various regulations on environment, but in practice, so far there haven't been any specific indicators and measuring methods to say how green a certain company is. We have companies whose shareholders are certain international funds requiring this disclosure, which means that these listed companies not only submit the non-financial data declarations, but also submit special reports for their shareholders on the topic. And nowadays, their effort will be, in the future, their effort will be made more specific and put in a more specific framework. In our discussions with legal experts, certain concerns occurred about the transposition of the directive. In fact, the main principles of the directive have been copy pasted but the requirements were not kept. That is, there wasn't an in-depth analysis of what would be required, in fact, in order to be able to um, achieve the desired goal.
И правна вакханалия е и обстоятелството, че към настоящия момент нито една от българските институции не се е ангажирала с това по някакъв начин да конкретизира цялата информация, свързана с аспектите като ESG. За пример мога да посоча обстоятелството, че във връзка с, знаете, че всяка година ЕСМА е от СКП, Европейски орган за ценни книжа и пазари, който е европейския регулатор на всички листнати компании, излезе с насоки, с които концентрира фокуса при представянето на финансовите отчети върху регламента за таксономията. Повярвайте, нито една от компаниите не беше чувала, че регламента за таксономията, конкретно член 8, а те са няколко цели: смекчаване изменението на климата, адаптиране към изменението на климата, съответните компании трябва да разкрият някаква информация. След редица проучване, и тук е хубаво да се каже, че компаниите отчитат различни добри практики на международни листнати компании, включително и чужди регулатори, като Autorité des marchés financiers, АМФ на Френската комисия за финансов надзор, а също и Бафин, където има специална страница по отношение на sustainability. И включително принципите и очакванията на регулатора, какво те очакват от публичните компании да разкрият по въпросите за устойчивостта. Факт е, аз съжалявам, че няма представители от страна на Комисия за финансов надзор. Ако отворите страницата на Комисия за финансов надзор и напишете примерно ESG или Sustainability, единственото, което ще ви излезе, са някакви насоките на ЕСМА, но няма да видите този детайл, какво всъщност се очаква от публичните компании. Това, което искам да кажа, че и след разговор с различни колеги от бранша, установяваме, че изготвянето на този доклад за устойчивост, който да покрива всички аспекти от международните СРС 12 на брой стандарти, трябва да се ползва външен консултант, който неминуемо в крайна сметка би повишило и административните разходи за изготвянето и продуцирането на един добър финансов отчет. На всичкото отгоре, от следващата година така наречения доклад за устойчивост ще се изисква, съгласно изискванията на делегирания регламент, да бъде тагиран. Това означава, че самия доклад за устойчивост ще излиза в определен машинно четим формат, като всеки инвеститор чрез т.е. чрез определен инструмент ще може да види всъщност доколко са спазени отделните изисквания по 12-те стандарта. Това е, аз може би.
Благодаря. Понякога емоцията е по-изразителна от хиляди думи, особено към края, когато говореше за качеството на правната регулация и абсентизма на някои държавни органи. Може би лека по лека това живота ще го навакса, но за наша сметка. Действително голямата полза на този тип отчитане е повечето откритост, повечето информация за инвеститорите и оттам съответно повече достъп на компаниите до качествени инвестиции. Безкрайно благодаря. Продължавайки с юридическото лоби, адвокат Николай Войнов от Пенков, Марков и партньори. Предизвикателства. Много хубав преход към правните предизвикателства. Микрофонът е ето там пред. Да, копчето в средата.
Благодаря, надявам се чуваме. Аз благодаря на колегата Даскалов, че така въведе.
I hope you can hear me. I thank our colleague for introducing the perspective. Now I have the easier part. Say a few words in transposing the directive. In Bulgaria, since ESG is considered a compliance regime, so non-compliance is not a surprise. As part of the team of Bekov, Markov and Partners, we have colleagues who work in the compliance, GDPR, email, now ESG, then greenwashing will appear. I would have liked not to bring down ESG to the next compliance regime. We actually made it by transposing it directly in the accounting law. A non-financial declaration replaced by reporting on sustainability. Because the content of ESG and ESG reporting is significant. This makes it possible because of Bulgarian economy, we have mostly small and medium-sized enterprises participating in global chains of delivery. This poses serious challenges and opportunities to improve your competitive advantage. The level of applying of standards in Bulgarian reporting is lagging behind sometimes, but this can teach us what the EC for so many years couldn't teach us, to compare to be compared to anybody. These are rules to be able to, let's say, compare with every supplier. This is the cohesion of catching up with other European economies. This is a key priority of ESG.
Неща, които може би трябва да се дооправят от правна гледна точка, тъй като това е моята позиция основна тук, като част от екипа на Пенков, Марков и партньори. Ние участваме в този процес вече мисля четвърта година. Транспонирането на директива по начина, по който е направено gold plating, т.е. максималните изисквания в една директива има три вида разпоредби, задължителни, опционални, такива, които могат да се направят определени резерви. В България в комплаенс режимите, не искам да генерализирам много, но в комплаенс режимите, горе-долу винаги на gold plating отиваме, т.е. възможно най-строгия и така да кажем подход, в който стопанските субекти така биха били
economic entities would be happy if we transpose the directive. On the other hand, it poses serious economic issues, the opposite of disadvantages for Bulgarian economic entities. I can give an example with GDPR, although it's a regulation, not a directive. IML, the requirements to all who have to comply are the same. It was quoted that the beneficial owner was dropped in from the GI standard, while the fourth and fifth directive, it was introduced in principle, but in Bulgaria you can check the corporate register. Everybody's there. If again we bring down ESG to the next in line regulation, we would be losing. So Article 48 from the Accounting Act should be improved because now we have 2 pages which are threatening. Our companies are worried by this competence of skills and knowledge of the different bodies. And then the question is, do we have to employ experts on sustainability? It is not necessary for the management bodies to be changed, or this would be the worst because this is a working model and it can be turned into a non-working one. In the same way, we have the question of auditing of reports. First is preparation with external or internal consultant. I think this would be a good way to make a favor to the company because we cannot trust that one single person, the environmentalist, for instance, will manage. They have to work together for the sustainability so that we can find those 1,000 positions, let's say, and find which are relevant to us. We are supported at the beginning by some external help. Now, second is auditing this document. Auditing is in the hands of chartered accountants. They have to take exams and then they will be capable after 8 months. They will become eligible after 8 months of experience. Whether the chartered accountants who are mostly working with financial data are the best solution and the only solution for reporting non-financial information. I'm not sure that we have one answer to this. Definitely, as expert on sustainability, should be aware with financial standards, but sometimes, perhaps, since I have the pleasure to work in the area of the environment and renewable energy resources, the most useful experts there are those who can assess the reporting are environmentalists, ecologists. Other experts can work in the social area. Third, in the governance field. And to demonstrate, for instance, 2 questions which clients ask me. So they always say, let the lawyer have a say and explain the topic. One of our clients had a request from the head of supply. I'm working in a foreign jurisdiction, Scandinavian. Please supply for my sustainability report information about, let's say, the labor-related accidents. This is not okay from the point of view of GDPR because this is sensitive information, and from the point of view of the labor code, it's not good at all because only one body in Bulgaria gets this report, nobody else, including information about the nature of the accident. Perhaps from the point of view of this jurisdiction, we are talking about the new directive due diligence in the chain of supply. Bulgarian small and medium-sized enterprises will be asking these questions. We conducted training. I was one of the trainers. For instance, that this is mandatory for companies in Bulgaria of 50 people. But again, a Bulgarian company is part of the chain of supply of a foreign company, and there is no limit in their jurisdiction. Everybody must have some kind of reporting, but the threshold is lower, 20 or 30 people. So they said, please introduce a policy. Now the practical questions come up. What do we do? In Bulgarian law, those who are obliged, they have the right of defense. Do they have the right of defense? Is it according to our law? Many practical questions arise. This is not clear. Here I have solidarity because there is no uniform norm in Bulgaria, unlike other European countries, that can provide the guidelines for this. I wouldn't say it's a legal chaos, but this legal insecurity, legal issues that can be cleared so we can know the real value of ESG. At one point, it will become so important that companies which don't comply with it yes, you can say that for the sake of double materiality, you will be um, thrown out of the supply chain. One of your competitors will develop a strategy and programs and sustainability report, and you will be displaced. You will not get funding from a bank, etc. The banks are funding enterprises which have a higher ESG profile.
Това е равно на гражданска смърт. Така или иначе.
And if you don't have a high ESG standard, it will be your natural death in time. As the colleague before me started and tried to finish his metaphor, legally speaking, ESG legislation is a further compliance regime in Bulgaria, but it shouldn't be left at this position. In my opinion, we need guidelines specifically for Bulgarians, maybe, where the information will be summarized in a suitable way to support the companies. And if you, as a company, manage to position yourself in a good way, you'll be able to comply with the regulations and prosper. Нямаме звук в микрофона, за съжаление. So, let's still remain in the legal sphere. I think that the legislation may be considered an attempt to use an unviable means. So, legally speaking, things are difficult. What are the economic stimuli? Let's get some feedback from the banking sector. Mrs.Preslava Mungova from the Commerce Bank. Hello, we are the last one before lunch. We are used to not having lunch, so no problems there. Let me put it this way. The common thing between banks and the government is that we work with the trust of our clients. ESG is a good opportunity to improve the synergy between the banking sector and the state. We are on the same side of the barricade. This shouldn't be only further regulation, it has its practical dimension. Unlike the previous period and the GDPR issue, um, I think my colleague here from the other bank will support us. We are better prepared. I think we are working well with the ESG standards, and we are not waiting for the regulation. For the people who are not part of the banking sector, there are two important issues. First are the scoring models that we are using in the background of the lending procedure. We have criteria that we use to evaluate the companies requesting financing. And in this sense, although our clients are not really well aware why, we have to explain to our clients that we give um, better financing, better conditions to the greener companies. The other criterion that has direct bearing on the ESG regulations are suppliers. I'm directly involved in the digital transformation and the digitalization of our bank. What are we doing? We are analyzing our external suppliers, and one of the criteria we are using in this analysis is ESG compliance. So, what's pending is to exchange information on the sustainable suppliers. Then, communication um, mechanisms of the banks and the anti-fraud reporting we are using anyway. Also here, ESG will have its role. For me, all the regulation related to the sustainability standards will be a good opportunity to increase the sustainability of the system, globally speaking, and would improve the communication between the banking institutions and the state in terms of reporting to the national regulator and to the European Central Bank, of course. That's from me. I don't want to bore you any further. If you have questions, you will be able to ask them during the break. Yes, the discussion energy is a bit low, but then for dessert, the general management of business products and development of UBB. Thank you for your patience. Good afternoon. It's a sign of sustainability and resilience that you're here. What was said about regulation, the regulations, I will touch upon this too, but I'll try to make an overview of the opportunities as well as another aspect of ESG. I won't surprise you by saying that the banking sector is usually a very efficient instrument when it comes to applying and implementing regulations like these. Indeed, it has been very efficient during the GDPR exercise and so on. And it's very easy for the state too to um, implement its policies through the financial sector. The financial sector is a sector that collects a lot of information. It will be able to do the reporting and impose the state's requirements in terms of ESG as well. That's one side of the things, but this is not our view of the transition, of the green transition. For us, ESG is a strategic priority. If it is part of the strategy of a certain organization, this organization makes all its decision through the prism of ESG. So we should not limit and lock the knowledge we avail of within one group of people. It should run horizontally. There should be opportunities for the knowledge to um, run through the various structures of the organizations, and all structures should have the understanding required to make their own policies through the prism of sustainability. When we talk about sustainability, though, it should be measurable, which means there should be indicators easy to follow. We have in our group the reporting. We are one of the few financial institutions publishing these green reports with a clear measurement system of how close we are to achieving our goals. KBC Group has assigned 8 areas where we could have greatest environmental impact in terms of emissions of greenhouse gases. So we have special analysis for each of these areas. We've monitored the KPI and have a risk assessment for every area. It's very important to have risk analysis because if you mitigate the risks, this could at a later stage run into a strategy, a strategic effort, and a new product. With regard to climate change and the green impact, we are a financial group and we need to be very well aware of the physical risks such as extreme climate phenomena. Uh, these phenomena have not only their effect on us as human beings, they have their financial effect. Another risk is the change of behavior of our consumers. Another issue that we monitor is the emergence of new business models and new markets. Our clients need to be able to adapt in order to stay on the market. We um, have white books on the different market sectors by country. And apart from climate change, we also monitor the changes of biodiversity, of water bodies, pollution, and so on, as a number of phenomena that we analyze as part of our risk assessment effort, which finally emerges as a recommendation and requirements for our clients. We require also information from them, but this information gives us awareness of the future possibilities for development and for the preparedness of our clients. One of the problems we are facing in Bulgaria is the problem with data. And not always do we have the necessary databases available to allow us to monitor the market changes. Uh, One of the reasons why some of our clients are not up to the ESG reporting standards is that they don't avail of this data, or the data is not um, structured in a way allowing for analysis. We are trying to assist our clients by providing them, for example, with a calculator we've designed for our farmer clients. Also, we are working on other tools to the benefit of our clients and for their better development. In fact, data is is fundamental for the transformation effort. And when speaking about transformation, let's not miss the other aspect. The ESG system has its own requirements and regulations, but it will take an enormous resource to introduce these changes. And I think that Europe is really good at is um, providing resources. It will be a revolutionary effort of utilizing close to 2 trillion euros to assist market subjects in their transition and transformation. We've engaged RRF instruments at the amount of billion and a half. Lefts will be available to our clients, and 70% of this resource will be available for transition investments. We have also resources from EIF and other bodies. It's not only about regulation. There are resources available. The banks will be able to uh, provide it to their clients to support their transition. Apart from the financial resource, we also avail of the knowledge, which is equally valuable. We've already pulled a lot of experience. We have our own academy that is a mini master's degree with courses for our colleagues so that they are able to assist our clients in evaluating the risks and moving forward. Hundreds of millions of euro are available for new businesses providing sustainability products, various types of products, uh, giving a competitive advantage to our clients at the beginning of this transition. This is, in my opinion, the role of the financial institutions. We are not only regulators, we open the doors for new opportunities so that we as a market are at the forefront of this serious transformation. It will take time. We are on the way already. As the faster we are going, the better we will make use of what we have. Thank you. Thank you. Indeed, the banks will be the circulatory system of this ESG transition. While you are thinking about your questions, allow me to say a few words in conclusion. We've shown today that we can be a good platform for all stakeholders involved. Let's think about another format. Having already the information of the active stakeholders, let's think about a more technical format where we could continue this discussion in a more technical way, in a more practical way. We heard many valuable things today from our participants, from their specific area of contribution to the common topic. I hope that we've provoked questions, or are you too tired to start asking questions? Maybe you're already tired. Let's have a family photo first and then go lunch.